What is going on, everybody? What is going on? Good morning. Tuesday, January 7th, 8 a.m. on the dot. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me on this Tuesday morning. Appreciate you guys being here. We'll give everybody a quick second to get on. We know the routine now, 8 a.m. Sleaze on. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. If you've yet to subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the damn channel. We got a fun show lined up today. Really, really good show lined up. Busy day today. Today we're going to have a combination of things. We're going to have the Sleewa show, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then, of course, we're going to have a post-game show tonight after the Lakers take on the Dallas Mavericks. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to give everyone a quick rundown of what we got going on for the show today. Looking forward to talking some hoops, a couple things around Major League Baseball. So we're going to get into all that. Just first off, cheers to you this morning. Hopefully everybody's getting their day off to starting their day off well. I do have a quote for everybody. This is going to be every day, by the way. I think in the beginning I said I'm just going to do this occasionally, this, that, if I find it. That's going to be part of the show. Part of the show is going to be part of the show is going to be a quote every morning. Your breath fills you with energy anywhere and anytime you need it. Your breath fills you with energy anywhere and anytime you need it. So another one of these good quotes. I'm just starting to post these things up now. I got them all over the place. Your greatest strength is love. What else we got here? Balance of head and heart yields strength of care. I just got these all over the place now. Might as well. All right, let me give everybody a quick rundown of the show, and then we'll get ready to get started here. Thank you, like I said, for being a part of the show. We're going to talk a little bit Lakers, Mavs. Not too much to be honest with you. Lakers tonight should just handle business. A lot of key players for the Dallas Mavericks are not playing, so they got work to do. They need to handle business, and we'll get a little bit into that game. Stay away from Bradley Beal, please. Please, can we stay away from Bradley Beal? And this is somebody that hasn't always been against the third star idea and concept. However, there was a tweet that came out yesterday, somebody out in Phoenix, that Bradley Beal, his no-trade clause, some teams that he would be open to going to. Bradley Beal is now coming off the bench for the Phoenix Suns, but the Lakers were on that list, so we'll get a little bit into that. Lakers not satisfied with the roster. That was coming from Jovan Buha. And they shouldn't be satisfied with the roster. And we'll look at, some potential moves that they can make moving forward. Specifically, you're kind of hearing some conflicting reports on Walker Kessler. No, the Jazz are not going to trade him. Yes, they're open to it. Also heard Robert Williams' name be mentioned as well. I mentioned Jovan Buha. Jovan is going to join us as well. So he's going to come on about 8:15. Jovan Buha is going to join the show, and we'll talk, obviously talk Lakers, talk NBA. And then I got some MLB news that I want to get into, specifically the Padres and the Dodgers, the two franchises who we thought, maybe they're creating a fun little rivalry here out in Southern California. I know baseball was loving it. I know it was badass to have those teams going up against each other in the playoffs 3 of the last 5 years. Yeah, not good for the San Diego Padres. I think both of these teams are heading in complete different directions. Dodgers are signing everyone. Padres have some legal issues with their ownership. So we'll get into that as well as we get towards the end of the show. Thank you for being here. Like I mentioned, if you can subscribe to the channel, we'd greatly appreciate that. My people, grab a cup of coffee, grab your cup of tea. I'm tea now. I'm tea. I already had the coffee. All right, let's get started here. Lakers got the Mavs coming up tonight. By the way, for everybody who said good morning to you as well. Appreciate it. Morning. Good morning, Slee. Brazil in the house. Thank you, Brazil. I appreciate it. All right, let's get going here. Lakers got the Mavs coming up tonight. Tonight is one of those games where there's no excuses for the Lakers. You got to just go handle business, call it a day, and move on. The Dallas Mavericks are missing a lot of players. Kyrie Irving, bulging disc in his back, is expected to miss at least 1 to 2 weeks. Luka, we know he's going to get reevaluated. He has that left calf strain. He suffered it on Christmas against the Minnesota Timberwolves. We know he's out. Let me just see the quick update here on Daniel Gafford. Mavericks head coach is after Monday's loss to the Grizzlies, probably going to be out for some time. Okay, so Daniel Gafford, there's another player that is out for the Dallas Mavericks. Lakers are coming off a loss against the Houston Rockets. Dallas, when they're healthy, badass squad, really good team. When they're not healthy, like they haven't been, I think they've now lost 5 games in a row, and they are plummeting in the standings. They're plummeting so far to where the Lakers are now actually past them. So Lakers are 20-15, Dallas is 20-16. They've lost 5 games in a row. They're not healthy, period. And even if they had Kyrie and even if they had Daniel Gafford, Lakers should win this game, but they don't have both of those players. Of course, Luka being the head of the snake for the Dallas Mavericks, kind of no messing around tonight. Really, really good chance for the Lakers. I'm looking at these next 2 games that they got coming up before they got kind of a fun battle coming up with the San Antonio Spurs over the weekend. But really an opportunity for the Lakers to say, all right, let's take care of Dallas. Game after that is Charlotte. You could be 22-15 with still all these home games set up in the month of January for you. I think they have a ton of games that are going to be in LA. The one road game that they have is a Clippers home game, so they don't have to obviously leave the city. It will be the first time that they're playing in Inglewood against the Clippers, at least at the Intuit Dome. But with that in mind, tonight is one of those games where no bullshit, no messing around. They got to roll up their sleeves, handle business early. I'm not going to say, well, maybe LeBron and Anthony Davis can only each play 30 minutes. That never happens. Every time I say it, it doesn't happen. But just don't play with your food. You can't do anything about the Dallas Mavericks having injuries. You can't do anything, in that regard. It is what it is. But what you can do is just simply try to take advantage of your schedule. All you can literally do is just say, all right, well, if we could put ourselves in a position where they can't do anything when some of these other key players are missing. But what you can do is just at least maybe give yourself a cushion that by the time Luka does come back, Lakers are positioned well to stay in front of the Dallas Mavericks and potentially be one of those top 5 teams in the Western Conference, maybe even top 4. We'll see what eventually happens. They're not that far away from everybody else. I mean, Rockets got 12 losses. Memphis has 13. Denver has 14. Lakers have 15. Now, there's a lot of teams right behind the Lakers as well. So you go on a 3-game losing streak, it's really going to hurt you. But I don't want to spend too much time previewing the Lakers and the Mavs. The only thing I'm going to say, take advantage of an opportunity that you have in front of you, and I think the Lakers will take full advantage of it. And like I mentioned, they got a couple of games here where they can do some damage, and then it's going to be a fun weekend. Saturday, you got Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs coming into town. San Antonio, I know they've lost a couple games in a row. I know they're sitting at 500. I know the Lakers have already beat them twice, and both games were in San Antonio. But the Spurs that's a good game. They're actually playing back-to-back. They're going to play them Saturday and Monday. So keep that one in mind here. I'm gonna keep things moving here. I have it as one of my headlines here. I saw this yesterday. I don't know how you guys feel about how you want to improve the roster, but I think everybody would agree that the Lakers don't have enough right now to say, hey, we got a shot. We got a shot against any one of these teams. They'll get better once Vando comes back. They'll get better by just getting healthier. But here's the reality of the Lakers situation is there's a couple different ways to try to build a championship team. You could have 2 stars and you could have a ton of depth. Or you can try that 3-star model and go from there. There was a report. I'm going to read this tweet here. I think he's a radio host in Phoenix, John Gambadoro. Okay. 98.7 is the Phoenix station out there. I'm just going to read what he said because this is going to take me into my 3 stars versus 2 stars in depth. By the way, I'm not opposed to 3 stars. It's just got to be the right 3 stars. They have to fit properly. They have to be at the right age. They have to complement each other. You need a lot to go right. But let me just read what he said here. As for Bradley Beal, the no trade looms large. There's been some rumors that Bradley Beal might get traded and that the Phoenix Suns might want to try to move off of him. Now, I don't know if they're going to be able to do so. I know his I'll tell you about his contract in just a second. But here's what they said about Bradley Beal. This is what John said. John Gambadoro. He could have went to Milwaukee before he ended up in Phoenix, but that was turned down because he has his no trade clause. Have heard he would waive the no trade clause for LA, Miami, Denver, but I do believe there are a few other teams that he would ultimately decide to work for. So that's a tweet that came out yesterday, which obviously proposed the question of, would the Lakers, would they actually consider trading for Bradley Beal? I'll just give my opinion on this, and you guys can feel free to do so as well. And we'll talk to Jovan about it when he comes on as well. I want nothing to do with Bradley Beal. I want nothing to do with him. And it's not that Bradley Beal is an awful player. I just don't think the Lakers, who would have to match salary. Now, that's the other thing to pay attention to, what his salary looks like. And I think the only way that this could happen would have to be a 3-team deal. It would be very complicated. Let's put it that way. Here's what Bradley Beal is making. This year, he's making 50. Next year, he's making 53. And the following year, he's making $57 million. There's a reason why the Phoenix Suns, who tried going with the 3-star, we can make it happen with 3 stars or whatever the case is, they linked up Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker together. It clearly isn't working. You go look at the Phoenix Suns. Have they had some injuries? They have, but look where Phoenix is. They're 16-18, and if the playoffs / play-in started today, they wouldn't even be good enough to make the play-in tournament. Do I think the Lakers are going to go out there and try to be aggressive to go get Bradley Beal? Personally, I don't. But I also, I know that sometimes the franchise can get attracted by stars. And, we saw it obviously with Russell Westbrook. Now, that obviously wasn't a good fit. Bradley Beal, a completely different player. But the last thing I want to see the Lakers do, and I'm looking at this more from a big picture. Do you think Bradley Beal and Anthony Davis is a good duo, is a good combination for the Lakers to potentially make some real noise? And I say that because the point that I'm making there has more to do with what's the future for the Lakers going to look like when LeBron's gone. And if you say, hey, you need another star when LeBron's out of here, I completely agree. There's no team in the NBA that's legitimately competing that doesn't have 2 stars. Now you can maybe make the case, well, okay, the Thunder's got Shai Gilgeous. Who's the other star? There's a lot of young players after that. The point that I'm making is that at the end of the day, the Lakers clearly, they're going to need more talent once LeBron is gone. Do you want that person to be Bradley Beal? Do you want that person to be Bradley Beal for 50 this year, 53 next year, 57 the fall? I mean, hell, if that's the case and you want to go after another star, go after Brandon Ingram. Go after a player that's at least younger, that plays both sides of the floor, is a wing in today's NBA that can be critical on both sides of the ball. And I'm not even telling you that that's a good idea. I'm just saying that the concept and the idea that Bradley Beal would waive his no trade clause to be a Los Angeles Laker, no, thank you. No, thank you from my perspective. Again, that doesn't mean that the Lakers don't trade for Bradley Beal and they're good and they're going to go compete for a championship. I don't think they have enough talent. One of the things that we'll talk about with Jovan when he comes on, and I know this was a part of one of his pods recently. I know one of the things on there was talking specifically about how the Lakers are not satisfied with their roster. But when I saw that, that article yesterday, or when I saw that tweet and then it was made into an article, okay, it's sexy. It's a name. It's, somebody that people would talk about. There are things that are structured towards that where you're like, oh, okay, hey, would that make sense? Would that be interesting? But instantly for me, you could see what's going on in Phoenix. Doesn't mean it's going to be the same thing with the Lakers, but you could see what's going on in Phoenix. Look what their record is in the Western Conference. It's not like I'm sitting here. If I told you that the Phoenix Suns with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, if I told you they're in the 7th spot or the 8th spot, most people would say, well, what's wrong with the Phoenix Suns? They're in 12th. They're in 12th place in the Western Conference. It gives you an idea of how bad it's going for them, and I want nothing to do with Bradley Beal. I just don't. Now, that doesn't mean that Bradley Beal can't fit somewhere else. That doesn't mean if Bradley Beal didn't get with the right team what was I was listening to Sirius XM this morning, the NBA channel, and I was driving in, and they were talking about Bradley Beal. Was Miami mentioned? I can't remember what teams were mentioned, but they were talking about some different potential places that he can go to. I think Denver was mentioned. How they would get Denver, I'm not 100% sure, but that one is more interesting to me than a Laker team. Somebody's putting on here the 3-star model is dying quick. Yeah, it's completely. I think the way it was structured before, the idea and the concept before, how it would get done before, not that it's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there was a time where, you can make a case and say, all right, we got three big time players. They're all stars. Do they complement each other? Does that model work? I'll use Boston as an example. Boston doesn't have 3 stars, but damn, do they not have 6 amazing players that are on that team? I mean, Tatum wasn't even the finals MVP, so it gives you a little bit of an idea. If I look at, let's see, it was Boston that won it this past year. If I kind of look at, even if you look at the Golden State Warriors, it's not like Klay Thompson and Draymond Green and Steph Curry. It's not like all three of those players were superstars. They weren't. KD was a superstar. Steph Curry was a superstar, is still a superstar. But those other players were just unbelievably perfectly fit role players. So I think that's, obviously there's a couple of different ways to look at it. But when I saw that article today, I personally want absolutely nothing to do with Bradley Beal. And it's interesting how quick things have changed because, a couple years ago, I don't know how you guys felt when Russell Westbrook was coming to the Lakers. I didn't have a problem with it. I didn't. If you want me to be completely honest with you, I didn't. I thought, okay, well, if LeBron wants it, then then certainly there must be something going on here. If Anthony Davis and LeBron James are saying, now we'll take our chances here. We can use a guy like this. We think he's going to be great. We think that this is kind of the missing piece to our team. Then I'd listen to those players. I'm not telling you that they're general managers, but they certainly know what they're doing when they're on the floor. But I think that model has gone away, and maybe that has something to do with the Lakers. Maybe that has something to do with the Lakers already getting a chance to see what that looked like at some point, and now saying to themselves, I don't know how crazy I am about that idea and that concept. All right, let me read some of your comments here as we go. All right, let's see what we got here. I would do a straight up Beal for Rui, but I wouldn't be that happy about it. All right, let me tell you something. If you did that straight up, you would be about 50 minus 16, 34 million, $33 million short. And you can't do it that way. The way this works is you'd actually have to involve a third team. That was part of the article that I saw in Lakers Nation. You need to involve a third team, even for that to be a part of a conversation. So I don't think that's happening, and certainly that's not happening with Rui. All right, I mentioned to you guys guests for today's show. Very appreciative of the time. This man is all over the place. He's hustling. He's doing his thing. It's Jovan Buha. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
What's going on, brother? How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm here in Dallas, ready for the game tonight. And yeah.
When'd you get in?
I got in last night at about 8 p.m. So if I don't have to take, as a veteran now on the road, if I don't have to take a morning flight or even an early afternoon flight, I like to avoid those.
Okay, I got a question because you are traveling all the time. Can I get a little backstage on this? What's the wear and tear of a beat reporter who's basically traveling everywhere these guys go? Because I don't think we understand it. Like when I see you at a Laker game, at most I drove an hour and a half or 2 hours from San Diego, or I was already in LA and I'm
It's a long
breathing hard.
drive.
And I'm
Yeah.
breathing hard. Give us the idea of all the travel.
Yeah, it's a lot. I at the end of the year, I get my Marriott. Like, how many nights of the year were you in a hotel room? And it's constantly 200 plus nights a year. And when you think about there's 365 days in the average year. That's over half the year spent in a hotel
Damn.
room. So yeah, it's a lot. That the miles, I would say, obviously the flying is tougher than, like, at this point I could kind of stay in a hotel anywhere and knock out. I'm actually a pretty good sleeper on planes. That's like, I would say that's my Olympic level skill, is I could just knock out in a second. But it's a lot. Like, I would say that the biggest thing is I feel like I'm constantly getting sick, or like picking something. Like,
Mm.
I'm almost like never fully recharged or healthy being on the road, because you are sometimes having to fly. Like, if it's a back to back, I got to fly at some point in the morning. So you're up late that night, then you get up the next day on a few hours of sleep, go fly to a different city. Maybe it's a different time zone, and all that stuff kind of accumulates. So the shorter trips, like this one's just trip to Houston and to Dallas. It's fine, but they got the one at the end, the Grammy trip at the end of the month, which is San Francisco, Charlotte, Philadelphia, DC, New York. Nice to go to New York, but it's still, that's like a 10, 11 day trip that, at least it's primarily on the East Coast, but that's going to be a tough one for sure.
All right, here's what I'd like you to do, Jovan. I want you to take some seconds of a back to back. I want you to load manage. Okay. And then, because all you got to do is hit the 65 threshold to win all the beat writer awards. So
You know what? I don't like load managing. I'm like the public, man. I want to do so, even if, because like we don't travel to every game, or at least
sure.
I'm not going to be. But I haven't missed a game in terms of coverage all season, and even on YouTube, like I didn't do the Cleveland game because it was New Year's Eve, but then the next morning, New Year's Day, got up, did a stream. So I'm locked in, man. I'm in for all 82.
I want one of these road games. You just walk into that, have like the hotel robe on. Like, guys, this is how I'm coming in today. Okay, this is how I'm.
That might be more realistic.
Well, I appreciate the time, brother. I know you guys you got in last night, so thank you for doing this. I won't spend too much time on it, but at least it was a conversation, and at least it was a tweet that was sent out by one of the local radio hosts out in Phoenix about Bradley Beal, and that as part of we all know, everybody knows Bradley Beal has a no trade clause, but there are certain teams he'd waiver for. And on that list, one of the teams reportedly was the Lakers. I spent a little portion of the show basically saying that, yeah, no, thank you, even if that would be an option. And I know it would be incredibly complicated to make a deal with the Phoenix Suns. You have to involve a third team. I'm not too surprised, but I think if this was a conversation 3 years ago, most Laker fans would probably say, oh, you could get Bradley Beal. Absolutely. This guy's an all-star. Where now I feel like there are so many people, so many Laker fans that are against the idea and the concept of a third star. Do you see any scenario that plays out where Bradley Beal is a Los Angeles Laker either by the time February 6th rolls around or by the time the summer comes around?
No. I don't like speaking in absolutes. I like to say that because it's the NBA. Crazy things happen. But I'm fairly confident that I could say, I just pulled up his contract, and he is making $50.2 million this season, 53.7 mil. Yeah, two more after, 53.7 next year. And then I'm going to break some news here. He's going to pick up that $57.1 million player option in 2026, 2027. So that's just way too much for a guy who, I mean, they're about to bench him, according to Chris Haynes, in Phoenix, and move him to the bench because it just hasn't been working. And now I guess you could make the argument that he's more similar in terms of skill set and just the way he plays the game to Devin Booker and Kevin Durant than he is to LeBron James and Anthony Davis, obviously. And like you could see how they could use that skill set next to those guys, but the contract is way too big. I still think he's struggled to fit in as that number 3 guy. He's a guy who's dealt with a lot of injuries during his career. And, if it was an expiring and the figure was lower, maybe there would be some chance. But having 2 more years of him at plus 50 million, that just really locks you in. Potentially, just from a financial perspective, you almost would have to include Austin in that. It's hard for the Lakers to get to that $50 million deal or number unless they're doing a third team. But then if you add in a third team, then they want assets. Like all three teams have to be touching each other in a trade, so it gets too complicated. I'm fairly confident it's not going to happen.
You had by the way, for those who don't know, Buha's Block on YouTube, phenomenal podcast that Jovan is putting up pretty much content on a daily basis. But go to Buha's Block, and I'll put a link to it here at the end of the show. We'll be on there as well. You had, I want to kind of address a couple of things here. I remember conversation that you and I had. You had me on your show 2-3 weeks ago, whenever it was. And one of the conversations we had, you talked about that the idea and the concept and the hope in a perfect scenario is if the Lakers do go out and make another move or they make trades or whatever the case is, they're hoping to have a player that is going to be on the roster for a couple of years. It would be nice to have. And by the way, it's a perfect reason why a guy like Bradley Beal, you want somebody younger. You want somebody that you think that, hey, this could be a player that stays on the roster for a while. Walker Kessler was a name that you brought up and you thought would be a really good fit for the Lakers. And I've seen, some different reports out there. I saw one report that the Jazz, I don't know how much of this is just posturing, that the Jazz, they won't trade him. And frankly, they don't have to. It's not like they're in a position where they got to get rid of the guy or anything like that. But I just want to get your opinion on the last time you and I talked. It was before DFS came to the Lakers, before Dorian Finney-Smith. With the current roster, how much, because it's been a conversation a lot of people have had, how much of a priority do you think it is right now of still improving the roster and potentially improving the roster, go get another big, whether that's Walker Kessler, Robert Williams, or some of these other names that have been out there?
So the first part of that, it's still a priority for the Lakers to upgrade the roster. That's my understanding. The second part is a little less clear, and that's from conversations, talking to people with the team, but also talking to people around the league. And sometimes that's how you can kind of cross-check different things, right? Because the team is going to have a certain narrative or a certain thing that they want out or that they want to share, right? And that's just a strategic thing, not even necessarily, not Lakers specific, not, it's just, that's how teams operate is that they try to have their kind of version of the truth and what they want out there. So I clearly, I mean, the backup 5 spot has been a weak spot for this group. I would argue for years. I think since the 2021 season,
Sure,
or the 2021 off season. So you had the first year LeBron and AD won a title. Second year you bring in Marc Gasol, Montrezl Harrell, Andre Drummond. Mm-hmm. That's still like solid. Since then, it's been a bit of a mess, to be quite honest. If you just look at it, it's been like a revolving door of minimum salary guys that none of which have really shown that they can play in like a playoff setting. And I think it's one thing, like a lot of teams have minimum backup guys. They're just better than the guys that the Lakers have had in recent years. So I think they could have addressed this in the offseason. They chose not to. They could have trade dumped somebody, attach a second round pick, and get off Christian Wood or something, especially with some uncertainty with his health. They chose not to. So to bring it back with the way
can I just ask you, Jovan? And I know you don't have an answer for this, but it's not like this came out of nowhere, like you said. This has clearly been something that they have been missing. I love that you went back all the way to 2021, because you are right that it's been that long since they have addressed this. Why do you think it's been ignored this long? Why do you think? And this offseason is a perfect example where maybe it was more reasonable to do a deal. Not that they can't get one done before February 6th, but why do you think there was so much hesitation on that?
I'm not sure. I think with the way that the game has changed, that there has been a clear shift to perimeter play, right? And if you look at a lot of the primary additions that the Lakers have made to the roster over the last couple of years, it's been Kendrick Nunn, Gabe Vincent,
Mm.
Torian Prince, even I mean technically Dalton Connect was a guy that they drafted, right? So it's been a lot more perimeter firepower and skilled guys to kind of help complement that LeBron AD tandem, but I just it just hasn't felt like it's been a priority, and they've also just had some misses with minimum guys because again, some teams do like Philly and Drummond, right? Like he's on
Sure.
a minimum contract there, and like that was a good value find for them, right? He's just kind of passable as a backup center, and he's not going to get bulldozed by a guy like Steven Adams the way that Jackson Hayes did, for example. So I I think my understanding to go back to it is like they want to look at the next few weeks and really see, Vando's progressing. So when is he potentially coming back? What does that look like? I think that does change what this roster looks like in terms of needs. If Vando can come back and be the Jared Vanderbilt that we saw in 2023 and even parts of 2024 before he went down, there's the playmaking issue now of like the bench without D'Lo has been struggling in terms of bench scoring and just they don't have another playmaker off the bench now. So do you maybe is one solution you move Rui to the bench and you start DFS, who's been, in my opinion, outplaying him over these last few games? Or do you maybe do that and also try and bring in another guy who can help run the offense? Maybe Gabe Vincent could kind of go back to being more of the Miami guy who had the ball in his hands more, and he's been shooting the ball better, lately. So I think for them, they're in evaluation mode right now of what do the next 3 weeks of this group look like, and based on that, what is the hole that we need to plug? Because I think you could argue they probably have 3 holes. I think it could be a better backup 5, another wing, maybe someone that like upgrades over like Cam Reddish, just as like that 9th or 10th guy in the rotation, or maybe someone who's better, who slides everybody down, and then kind of another playmaking guard who's better than a Gabe, better than a Shake Milton. You're not getting all 3 of those things. So you got to pick 1, maybe 2, if you're fortunate to be able to do a bigger deal. So I think for them, it's just trying to figure out which one of those needs is greatest ultimately.
Of those 3 of those needs, is there one that's clear to you that should be the priority?
I would go between wing and big. The playmaking, I think ultimately, when it comes down to it in the playoffs, you're going to have
Ron will have the ball in his
LeBron
hands, or Reeves. Yeah.
and Reeves, and even AD. AD
Sure.
stepped up his playmaking recently. So I think you can get by with those 3 guys, and they're going to be playing 40 minutes a night or 38, whatever. I would also look at that though and say AD plays 38, 40 minutes a night in the playoffs. You don't just need a big just to have a big necessarily. I think you need a big who's of a certain caliber who can, hold down the paint for those 10 minutes AD's off the floor and potentially play next to him. And I think that that pool of big men is a pretty small group right now. I think a lot of the names that people are throwing out are just not playoff viable candidates. So I would actually probably lean toward just another athletic wing. Like I really look at the Houston game and like I've said this on my show. Sometimes it looks like the Lakers are playing a different sport than another team. And that first half was like, it was a track meet and the Lakers could just not keep up. And they obviously righted the ship in the second half, but if you don't go down by 22, you probably win that game. So, and the reason in part they went down by 22 is Amen Thompson's flying all over the court and the Lakers don't have a guy who can really keep up with that. So I kind of lean more toward the if you could add another big athletic wing, that might be the guy I favor. But if not, those guys are hard to find. Those guys are expensive. Then I probably look at the backup 5 spot.
If you're going to make a move, obviously players got to go out. And if you look at this roster right now, I spent a little time on this yesterday. Players that I think are expendable, players that you do think, hey, if another move is to happen, and I think you and I both agree that this team needs another move, and it doesn't guarantee them anything. But as they try to figure out the roster and changes that they can make, what players do you think are, I don't know, vulnerable is the right way to put it, but what players do you think that when the dust settles, there's a good chance one or two of these guys are no longer a Laker if they were to make another move?
I think the guy right now, it's looking like, and this is in part because of the prior trade with DFS, is potentially Rui. I mean, just from a contract perspective, and if you're adding someone of consequence, with the exception of Walker Kessler, who's still on a rookie deal and is making, I want to say just under $4
Two
million
and change. Oh,
dollars.
yeah,
Or
that's
you
right.
might even be right. It might even
I think
be
it's two
lower.
and change, and then it's maybe three and change next
That's
year.
yeah. So making a little bit of money, and you could trade out a Jalen Hood-Schifino, a minimum guy, a Dalton Connect, if you really wanted to be aggressive, and that that would be a big move. But outside of Walker Kessler, most of the other names that you hear that are actually of starter potential or like high level bench guys are going to be making double digit salaries. And there are some exceptions if people want to point to those, but for the most part, anyone like a Cam Johnson, a Robert Williams,
Yep.
a Bruce Brown, all those guys are making double digit salaries. So to get to that, you need, if it's a higher level guy like a Bruce Brown making 23 million, you almost certainly need Rui and that 17 million in that deal. If it's a Robert Williams, who I think is making like 13, 14, you could probably get there with Gabe plus a minimum contract. But the one thing with both of those guys is they both have an extra year left on their deals. And for some teams, that's going to be like for Brooklyn, part of the reason why they wanted D'Lo is because he's an expiring.
Sure.
And they didn't have to take back longer term money. And now he's going to be a free agent. And if they want to resign him, they could do that. But more likely, he'll have to go elsewhere. And they're kind of going on their rebuilding path. So for teams have to kind of figure out which one of those guys they'd want more between Rui and Gabe, and the higher salary guy, lower salary guy. But in terms of actual trading the contracts, I would put those two guys at the front of the line in terms of Lakers most likely to be moved. Vando could be technically in there too. But the problem is he's got 3 more years,
Sure.
and that's just a lot to take on. So I think among those 3, Rui has the most value, but he's a very polarizing guy around the league, depending on who you talk to.
Sure. No, and I'm sure anytime you're covering the Lakers or interacting with Laker fans, there's a frustration that comes with Rui, right? One night you're, hey, solid 16 points and hit 3 threes, and you felt his presence. And then other nights, I didn't know he played 30 minutes. I didn't even see him. I didn't feel his presence on the floor. I know that kind of comes with the territory of Rui. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this because Dorian Finney-Smith comes to the Lakers. Obviously, Shake Milton as well. D'Lo goes out, and Lakers did that early enough to why this is why we're having the conversation of what's next and what could happen next. Just your overall thoughts on the team. I think the game against the Rockets is a great example for me where they're playing a young, athletic team, a gritty team, leading rebounding team in the NBA, and they showed it. Offensive rebounds and everything else that they were able to do. They go down 22, but when the dust settled, Lakers are right there. They got a chance to beat the Rockets, and there were very correctable mistakes. When you look at the scope of the NBA, and I'm not telling you that everything's running through the Rockets because I think we both agree that it's not. But when you look at some of the elite teams in the league, how far are the Lakers from competing with some of these teams that are in front of them in the Western Conference and in the Eastern Conference as well?
I don't think they're that far. Now, the one distinction I'll make is I've been asked this on my show. Like, I don't think there's a move that the Lakers can make to put them on the same level as Boston, Oklahoma City, and maybe Cleveland. I have Cleveland third in that group, and I just think Boston and OKC are in my opinion, clearly the 2 best teams in the league. So, but that doesn't mean like if you want to say Boston and OKC are like tier 1A, Cleveland's tier 1B, Lakers could get to tier 2. And if you're in tier 2, you have a shot. Like there are seasons we've seen, and the season has felt relatively wide open, where the team maybe on paper isn't like the best team or the most talented team in the league, and they still win a championship or still make the finals. So, and also I will note, two of those three teams are in the East. That there was only one West team I mentioned because I think the rest of the West is wide open. Like if you put the Lakers in a playoff series with Houston or with Memphis,
Sure.
uh, like I think they could beat either one of those two
I
teams
agree.
in a seven
Absolutely
game
agree.
series
Hmm.
as currently constructed. Forget adding anybody else in a deal. Now I think there's some teams lower in the conference, like I think Dallas and Denver would be two tough matchups for them. A healthy Dallas, of course, and Denver has obviously been a side in the thorn in their side for a while now. But that also to me is why they should be going for it and why they should be putting the picks on the table. And I almost go into it like, here are our movable pieces, here are our draft assets, and like what is the best combination? Like what is the best player we can get for some combination of this that really raises our ceiling? Because you realistically, we've talked about this several times on your show now. Like you got maybe 18 months of LeBron and AD together. That's two more
100%.
shots at it.
100%.
And really you don't want to like go in all in next year, right? You got to go all in now. So I think they should trade at least one of those picks, get the best possible upgrade player, whatever available, and then let's see what happens the rest of the season. But if they don't, then I think that's like the DFS move is I think it's looked good. He's played well, and I give them kudos for that. I don't know if that's quite enough for them to be considered going all in.
It's funny because the moment that deal went down, and I'm sure you were throwing up content, I was throwing up content as well. And one of the first things I said was like, "Awesome, that's a great step one." But I didn't, I don't think anybody said that they're good. I think they just said that that's a good trade. It feels like the right move. I think it fits more of what JJ Redick's philosophy is going to be. We know what the team has been defensively, at least over this stretch where they got back on track. They feel like they're more of a defensive team. Okay, what's next? And I think everybody said that. And I think you know this better than anybody. It was Rob Pelinka. It wasn't me. It wasn't you. It wasn't anybody else that said this. But I do remember when Pelinka, I think it was right after last trade deadline, said that you can't buy a home that's not for sale. And then at one point, I can't remember the timing of this, talked about how, well, we're going to have an additional now first rounder that we can use to go get another player. They use one of those first rounders on Dalton Connect. And here they are still holding on to those two first rounders. Do you think there's, how do I put this? I mean, listen, Palenka's got a job to do. His job is not to just think of today. His job is to also think of tomorrow. So I understand you want to be really responsible with those draft picks. But at the same time, your roster is telling you we have to live today because, like you mentioned, you got 18 months left at max of what this run can be. Do you think there's hesitation on trading the picks, or do you think just nothing has come to fruition to where Pelinka says, F it, I'm freaking trading the picks and I'm going all in?
I think it's a combination, but I think it's more that second point than anything, because if you look at the guys currently on the trade market, guys being in rumors and reports and whatnot, like how many of those guys are actually worth a first round pick, right? And some of these guys, like a Walker Kessler and a Cam Johnson, the asking price is 2 first round picks, right? So I think that's where it gets a little. Now, I think that the flip side, though, is if you're the Lakers and like the market is the market, it's sort of comes down to, do you want to get better or not, right? And of course, you don't want to overpay. And that's why I think the DFS move was so shrewd, because they didn't have to give up a first round pick. If anything, I thought they got pretty good value for him and didn't have to give up a crazy amount. And that was a good deal. But at the end of the day, again, it comes down to like you only get so like how many times are we going to see a tandem like LeBron and AD, two guys who have been top 10 players basically for a half decade together, and they have a championship and a conference finals to show for it. But the other 3 years have basically first round exits or missing the playoffs or missing the play-in. Like it's just been it's been up and down, and part of that's been injuries, part of that's been roster construction, part of that's been luck. There's a lot of factors that have gone into that. Of course, the Westbrook trade as well, but I just think now I will say since the Westbrook trade, which makes me think of it, like there has been some more caution from the Lakers side in terms of giving up assets, being aggressive in trades. If you look at the moves they've made since before and after then, they have been more aggressive, prior and more cautious post Westbrook deal. But I think it's more so them looking at the market and being like, none of these guys really jump out as being worth what the asking prices are. And if we're patient, maybe that can drop closer to the deadline.
All right, final one. I'm gonna stay with Cam Johnson here for a quick second because I think that's, you were talking about, hey, you need another wing player, you need another a player that can potentially fill that role. Do you think that when push comes to shove, by the time we get to February 6th, I guess you don't even have to use Cam Johnson as an example, but do you think the Lakers will still have 2 first rounders in their pocket, or do you think at least one of those will have been used and the Lakers did make another move?
It's a good question.
And I listen, I know we're obviously,
Yeah.
it's just an opinion, but I'm just curious to get your thoughts of, because of their situation. I think because both of you and I said they're not in that top level tier, which any trade probably still doesn't put them there. But do you feel like with some of the pressure that's on because of the window that they have, that at least one of those picks are gone?
I think it's pretty close right now. One thing I've been saying is that I certainly I would say I think they're more likely to use no picks than they are to use both picks. Barring maybe if they can really get a shot at the Aaron Fox, someone like that, like maybe that's the exception. But outside of like, I don't see them putting 2 picks in for a Walker Kessler or for a Cam Johnson. I think that price is just too high for them for that caliber of player or upgrade or whatever. So realistically, I think it's more between, do they use a pick or do they use 0 picks rather than of the 3 scenarios. That I think is pretty close. I guess I would lean more toward them using a pick because I think they've been playing so well. They're 8-4 over their past 12. They've been a top 10 defense. I think that they're almost applying some pressure on the front office, on the organization.
I agree.
To have to, like we were talking about that 30 game mark and where they were going to be. Well, they're right now, we're just the number 4 seed, and now they're the number 5 seed. So it's like they're right there in the thick of it in terms of the Western Conference playoff race. And I just think they might be one move away, one final upgrade, especially if Vando's the kind of the swing piece here, where if I just think he changes the whole outlook of this team if he can get healthy and stay healthy, because then I think if we're talking about potentially trading Rui, I think he's a little bit more expendable if you have DFS, Vando, and Max versus if it's just DFS and Max and then like Cam. Now all of a sudden you're more reliant on Rui, right? So I think Vando changes the complexion of this team, and if he can get healthy and play within the next couple weeks, and we see what that looks like, I think we'll have a better idea of like their ceiling, what they really need, and then at that point it's like, okay, who's more expendable basically between Rui and Gabe, and then go get that piece that you need.
Jovan, I know, and just real quick here, I know it was a couple days ago that what was the quote that Vando was making real progress. Was there anything more to that, or was that literally just the terminology that JJ used?
So he said that he was progressing to ramping up to on-court activities. So that was kind of word salad, in my opinion, a little bit. Like he said it was real progress, and that, like, I guess the implication was that compared to previous times they've talked about him, it was not real progress. Okay. But he said ramping up to on-court activity. So I'm like, that means he's not doing on-court activity. And typically a player comes back, does on-court activity for at least a few days, if not a week. And for a guy who's been out for almost a year, you would think that might be like 7 to 10 days or something. So he seems to be progressing, and that was like the most substantial update it feels like we've gotten on him. but there was still no like he's practicing, he's taking part in 5-on-5, like he's close to a return. It was like we'll give you another update soon. So we've heard that with him like 4 times.
That's very, very accurate. All right. You got a game to go cover, man. What the hell are you still doing here? What the hell are you still doing here?
I always appreciate talking with you.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you coming on. I'll see you soon at a game at Crypto, but thank you for the time. Very, very much appreciated. Buha's Block on YouTube. Go see his work that he's doing on The Athletic as well. Killing it. Jovan, you're doing a great job, and I always appreciate the time. All right, brother?
Appreciate you.
All right. That is Jovan Buha right there. Great stuff. Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the things that he said there towards the end that I feel like is it's more likely they trade no picks than trade both picks. Yeah, listen, I think it's easy from a fan perspective or somebody that's just covering it. What the hell do I care? Yeah, go trade the 2 picks. Our job is not to make sure that the Lakers' future is perfect. Our job is more to, well, how are you going to win right now? It's kind of, I know I say that joking around, but that's kind of the reality of it. But I understand what he's saying. Hey, we're not going to trade 2 first rounders for Walker Kessler. Those are 2 valuable of picks, or we're not going to trade 2 first rounders for Cam Johnson. Now, granted, I think both of those players would really help the Lakers this year. I understand where the organization's coming from. I love what he said, too. It's like, hey, listen, if you found a way, 2 first rounders should be getting you a player that you're like, all right, that dude's going to be on the Lakers for the next 4 or 5 years. I don't think De'Aaron Fox is coming to the Lakers, but that is a situation where you're like, all right, you tell us what you need, and we will give you the best that we got from an assets perspective to make it happen. So great stuff there from Jovan Buha. I always appreciate his time. I have looked none at the comments. I get distracted sometimes. If the comments are in there, I get distracted. So I'm going to start looking at some of the comments right now. Let's get into a few of these, and then I still want to get into. I got a couple baseball things I want to get into as well, but we'll keep going here. Nick, thank you for the super. I appreciate it. Regards from Madrid, Spain. Alan, do you know anything about Miles Turner? He would be so perfect. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate the super, and thank you for tuning in all the way from Madrid, Spain. I got a feeling Indiana doesn't do anything. Miles Turner has been in the trade rumors for the Lakers. It seems like I feel like Miles Turner already played 3 years with the Lakers. I feel like I have a Miles Turner Lakers jersey. I don't think he goes anywhere. I think he's going to end up staying with the Pacers, and I think whatever heat and momentum that was there before, it feels like it's completely gone. That's not a player that the Lakers would go after, nor would it be a player that's available. So, Nick, I appreciate it, but I don't think a Miles Turner is going to be happening. Kevin Brown, good morning, Slee. Assuming reports are true and a Vando return is near, does he slot in at the 2 with Max for perimeter defense? No. I think Vando's I'm trying to think here if you're talking about playing with Max or coming off the bench with Max. Let me tell you what I think happens if Vando is healthy. If Vando is healthy, I think he comes off the bench, and then I think as he gets to, hey, I'm good to go, I think Rui's spot becomes expendable. Listen, I did this yesterday before we had the conversation with Jovan. What did I spend talking about which player is most likely to go? Rui or Gabe Vincent. Now, if you told me to pick between the 2 players, I think Gabe gives you less, and I have less confidence in Gabe. But Rui, his contract, the fact that you got Dorian Finney-Smith, the fact that if Jared Vanderbilt comes back, and by the way, the reason why that was even kind of a conversation right there. A couple days ago, there was word that Vando, I'll read the exact quote, he's making real progress. So Dan Wyke put this out. JJ Redick says Jared Vanderbilt knee issue has dissipated, has gone down, and he's ramping up for return to play. Said the progress is real. All right, whatever that means. But I think that the Vando piece, if he comes back, I think it's Rui that's the player. Look, they're gonna have a lot of options at that position, but that's today's NBA. You better got wings, better have wings that can play multiple positions. The only problem with Vando, he's obviously no threat on offense, where some of these other guys are more of a threat on offense. Kevin, I appreciate the super. Northborough AES. JJ has got to play more than 7 guys. The bench still needs reps if you want to go deep. Beal boosted the bench last night for Phoenix. Rui could do the same. All right, I think we all agree with this. There's no way that he's going to be a Laker, and I'm talking about Bradley Beal. I think your point here, Northborough, is bring Rui off the bench. I got an issue with that. You know, I think this is the one thing that I would just be cautious of. Lakers are winning games right now. So do you want to make a change when things are going pretty well? It doesn't mean that DFS isn't going to play starter minutes or close out games for the Lakers. It just means things are going pretty good right now. It's not like the Lakers, earlier in the season where it was like, start Dalton Connect, put Dalton Connect off the bench, start D'Angelo Russell. I don't think they're in this desperate situation. It's just finding out what 5 work the best. And just because you don't start, it doesn't mean that you're not going to play starter minutes. But I do think Rui's the kind of the wild card on this team. I've said this before. I got no idea what Rui's going to give the Lakers night in, night out. By the way, it's not just Rui. Do I know exactly what Gabe Vincent's going to give the Lakers, or Cam Reddish is going to give the Lakers, or Max Christie or Dalton Connect? I don't know what these guys are going to give every single night. I think that's part of the figuring out process that the Lakers have. Let's get another one of these in here. Rich, by the way, appreciate all the supers, very much appreciate. Even if you're throwing comments in there without the super, I appreciate it as well. But obviously, thank you, Richard, for another one here. Center or someone to start next to AD preferred. I don't think they need to have a big to start with Anthony Davis. I think they just need to have a big as a real option of, okay, let's have lineups. Let's have the option of having lineups later in a game where, like we just mentioned, they can have a little bit more of what it looked like when Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee was there. And I know that was different because the Lakers just had so much size. The problem right now is they don't really have any of it. I thought it was interesting too with Jovan. We're both kind of scratching our heads. Why haven't they addressed this? What's the reason? What's the reason of not addressing it? And if they think, no, in today's NBA, you don't need as much of that, I think the Lakers have shown that is, you want to at least have that option. And whether that's going to be Robert Williams or Walker Kessler or one of these other names, I still think they're going to make a move. I really do. I still think at the end of the day, they're going to make a move. Kevin, thank you again for the super. Pelinka been building to the post LeBron era for the past 2 years and just didn't tell anyone. That's fine. You can be building towards post LeBron, but you're also competitive enough to where you don't want to be in the middle. I've said this to you guys before. I really do believe it, that when you're stuck in the middle in any sport, it's the worst place to be. Either you want to be competing and have a chance to win it all, or give me the back of the food chain and let me, start rebuilding. So I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. Kevin, thank you for the super, brother. Fox is a diva. I'll take that diva any day of the week. De'Aaron Fox was a Los Angeles Laker and they could find a way to get him. Oh, I'd take that in a heartbeat there. All right, let me see a couple more of these comments and then we'll keep going. AR is at his ceiling. Could be. He's a damn good player, I'll tell you that. I don't got a problem with Austin Reeves. I don't. Do I get frustrated sometimes because some of his turnovers and everything else? Sure. But I think that's kind of comes with the territory for his style of play. Not that I'm justifying it. I just think that literally comes with the territory of his play. What's the latest with Christian Wood? I haven't heard anything. Yeah, Wood is the one that's probably been talked about the least. The player that we keep hearing his name is Jared Vanderbilt, and that one, I have no idea what happens. Okay, damn. A lot of comments here. I want to keep going with the show because I do have a couple other things that I want to mention here real quick. I'm just going to hit this one because I talked about it a little bit earlier. Walker Kessler, I really genuinely have no idea what the story is with Walker Kessler. There was a report out there, Dan Weike, LA Times. Is this thing going to open or is it not? There was a report out there that Walker Kessler it's not realistic. Find this real quick here. Give me 2 seconds. Lakers top trade target reportedly unavailable before deadline. Dan Weike of the LA Times. By the way, he's going to join the show on Thursday. You guys are going to get a little bonus action on Thursday because I'm going to go longer on Thursday. So FYI, that might be closer to a $120 of a show, $130, somewhere around there. While teams have expressed interest in Utah center Walker Kessler, the Lakers included, the belief in the NBA circles is that he's not available in any realistic trade scenarios. Utah electing to keep one of the NBA's top rim protectors through the deadline. And then, there's other articles out there saying, no, he is available. It's just, look, do I think this is posturing? I do. I think what they're trying to do is basically get around NBA circles with about a month left to go that he's not available. And you're going to have to give up first rounders plus in order to get Walker Kessler. What makes him so valuable is, first off, he's a good player. Second, he's super young. And third, he's super cheap. That's what makes him so valuable around the league. But they don't have to do anything. He's making $3 million this year and 4.8 next year. They don't have to do anything. So 3 and change this year, just under 5 for next year. They don't have to do anything. The last thing I'm just going to mention here in the NBA, and we're going to get out of the NBA. I got a couple things left on baseball I want to get into. Walker Kessler or Robert Williams. I was looking at both of those players. The difference with Robert Williams, just so you guys know, I just mentioned the money for Kessler, $3 million this year, $4.8 million next year. Robert Williams of Portland, $12 million this year, $13 million next year. Can you imagine you give up Gabe Vincent for Robert Williams? I don't know why Portland would do that. I don't know what kind of draft compensation you would need, but damn. Talk about getting rid of something that's not doing anything and getting something in return that you think can actually help you. That would be phenomenal. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not going to happen. All right, I'll read a couple of your comments, and then we'll get into some of this baseball stuff. No to Robert Williams, too injured. Yeah, the guy has been out a lot, but that style of player is a player the Lakers need. You're not wrong. He has been injured. But 100% that type of player is what the Lakers need. Slee and coffee in the morning. Good morning, buddy. Darren, thank you. Thank you for tuning in, brother. Grab your coffee, your tea, whatever it is you're drinking. Kessler for 2 first rounds would destroy the Lakers' title aspirations. Yeah, you can't give up 2 first rounders for Kessler. You can't. That's just that's too expensive. All right. Last thing I want to get into here real quick. Man, is this a frustrating story for your boy here? Quick MLB news. Yesterday, there was a article that came out. Widow. It actually wasn't even an article. It was, I think it was a tweet that was sent out. Widow of late Padres chairman Peter Seidler sues 2 of husband's brothers over control of team. Sheil Seidler, the widow of Peter Seidler, who passed away. This was about a year and some change ago that he passed away. She's trying to take control of the San Diego Padres, trying to take control of the team. I'm not going to get into the will, the trust, all this stuff. It's kind of a confusing situation here in San Diego. But I thought about this, and, if you look at what's gone on so far in the offseason, you've had 3 of the last 5 years, the Padres and the Dodgers have faced each other in the playoffs. So they face each other in 2020. They face each other in 2022. And then, of course, they face each other in 2024. And the Dodgers have taken 2 of those 3 series against the San Diego Padres. And, however you view the Padres, 3 of the last 5 years, they've made the playoffs. And that's all you can kind of ask for, is you just want to be in the mix. And I think in baseball, anything can happen. And if you see what's happened so far this offseason, the Padres have not made any moves. And it's not too much of a shock. I think that they're working under certain parameters. They don't have endless money like teams like the Dodgers. And this situation that just came out, this story, it's such a bummer because, and I don't know what's going to happen. One of two things can happen. Maybe this really hurts the San Diego Padres' chances down the road of making any noise because you got this internal struggle for the team. Maybe they sell and they end up with a better ownership group that goes out there and says, yeah, we want to compete. We kind of got the San Diego market to ourselves. We've seen that this place can get sold out year after year, and that there is a hunger, at least from a fan base perspective, to support the team. But just to see the two franchises right now, you got the Dodgers that went out and signed Blake Snell, re-signed Tommy Edman, went out recently and made another move, Hai-Sung Kim, which is part of the reason why they traded away Gavin Lux yesterday. And then the big acquisition that everybody's kind of waiting for, that the earliest it can happen is January 15th, is Roki Sasaki. With all that in mind there, and this is one of the first things that I thought of when I saw this, the two teams that have been most associated with Roki were the Dodgers and the Padres. You think Roki Sasaki is going to look at the San Diego Padres now and say, oh, really interesting what they're doing down there? I don't think he will. And, I don't know how else to put this, but it's incredibly frustrating for me personally because I'm a Padres fan. But I think it's also just you kind of had something cool going between the Padres and the Dodgers, where Dodgers are the Goliath. Dodgers got every resource possible, but the Padres hung with them and had opportunities when they were up 2-1 to close out the series. They didn't do it, bottom line. And I've said this before. I got no excuse for the Padres. They didn't make it happen, and that's that. But, okay, since the Padres were up 2-1, here's where the two franchises have gone. The Dodgers were always going to go in their own direction because the way that team is ran, their resources, everything else. But, yeah, those days of thinking that maybe the Padres and the Dodgers, this could be something that these two teams go at for the next X amount of years, don't feel too confident about that. So, unfortunately for San Diego, that is clearly not the case right now. All right. By the way, David, you're right, 100%. Re-signing Teoscar Hernandez, I think that was probably it's not the biggest move of the offseason for the Dodgers because you just signed another Cy Young Award winner in Blake Snell. But I thought Teoscar was huge. And I really actually thought there was a moment there that once Juan Soto went where he went, I thought, hey, maybe, just maybe, there's going to be other teams overpaying for Teoscar. He wanted to be a Dodger, and he found a way to get it done. All right, my people, that is all we got for today. I appreciate everybody hanging out. I'm back on tonight. So after the Lakers take on the Dallas Mavericks, after the Lakers beat the Mavs tonight, why? Because Gafford isn't playing, Kyrie isn't playing, and Luka isn't playing. After the Lakers beat the Mavs tonight, if I jinx it, then you guys can give me as much shit as you want. After they beat them tonight, I'll come on here and do a post-game show, and then I'm back on tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Thank you very much for supporting the channel, for hanging out. I greatly do appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel if you don't mind. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to Jovan Buha for taking the time joining me on the show while he was in Dallas. So thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your morning and a great rest of your day. We'll see you tonight.